Every story has a backstory, and at 12 News, we want to share it with you and give you a glimpse into the process of how the stories we cover come together. Everything from how we find a story, the challenges we encountered in reporting on it, and diving deeper into all the details of the biggest stories of the day. This is The Backstory. Who were first-time homeowners in Mesa had their world turned upside down when their next-door neighbor lit their home on fire, and then they struggled to get their insurance to pay for the damages.
The frustrating thing is, it happened to us, so it wasn't our fault. It wasn't an accident that we were a part of. It was I thought it'd be a lot easier, more straightforward. Clearly this guy attacked us. He did something wrong. You guys didn't do anything wrong. It should just be a really easy
insurance
fix. Yeah.
Fixes it.
Well, for months, this couple was left in limbo until 12 News stepped in and the insurance company changed their tune. Joining me right now for the backstory is our consumer and investigative reporter, Katie Wilcox. So, Katie, what did the insurance company do?
So actually, ultimately what they did was they paid. They paid the entire amount. But first, this couple had to get a private adjuster to help them actually get what an appraisal could be. The insurance wasn't there for that. It was weeks, and then it became months and months of waiting. But yeah, after they called us, I started making calls, and all of a sudden they got a check.
Yeah. Okay, so what happened, though, in their neighbor's case?
So that's been the other kind of thing that's been left in limbo for this couple. The next door neighbor was arrested and charged that very same day, and he does have a history. One of the problems that we found is that it seems as though he was struggling with a serious mental illness or some kind of mental illness that they're still evaluating whether or not he can even be competent to stand trial. So they're waiting and waiting on that as the case continues to go through what they're called Rule 11 hearings. We've talked about a lot on this station, and he has another one coming up in May.
So overall, what can we glean from this? What are homeowners to do?
So I think there's a lot of different tips that homeowners can take. Obviously, there's nothing you can do when there's that kind of, when you're kind of under attack in that way. And I think they did all the right steps in dealing with the immediate issue. They also took a lot of the right steps following after that. They kept all of their text messages. They kept all of their emails. They actually started recording phone calls, which is totally legal to do in the state of Arizona as long as one party who's involved in the call is the one recording it. And they really kind of made their own paper trail to make sure that they could advocate for themselves, and then got more people to help advocate for themselves because they needed this help at the end of the day.
Yeah, no kidding. And fortunately, you guys were able to step in. So thank you so much, Katie. It is peak rattlesnake season right now, with baby rattlers hatching and adult snakes slithering across trails and yards. One Valley woman just went through a harrowing ordeal after her dog was bit by a rattlesnake, and it was all caught on camera. 12 News journalist Ginger Jeffries shows us what happened in this exclusive report.
Just before 8 o'clock in the morning, Kimberly Seward heard her dogs barking. She looked out into the yard and saw a terrifying scene. After seeing the snake strike twice, Kimberly rushed her 6-year-old dog named Romeo to the vet.
Romeo got bit twice in rapid succession, probably got a lot more venom than if he just got struck once. But luckily she saw it on the video and everything and was able to get him in right away.
Rattlesnake venom causes changes in the blood cells, which prevents the blood from clotting. This can lead to internal bleeding in addition to heart, respiratory, and kidney failure. During the first 36 hours after Romeo was bit, the swelling from tissue damage compromised his breathing.
He actually, around midnight, started having a hard time breathing, so I had to take him to the ER. He stayed at the ER until 6:30 in the morning, and then I picked him up, brought him back here. He stayed here a whole nother day, and then I got 1 hour of sleep that night, and then I brought him back here for more fluids. So it was 3 full days of going back and forth to here and the emergency hospital.
A few days later, Romeo was finally showing some signs of making a full recovery.
We're eating.
According to the Arizona Poison Center, more than 200 rattlesnake bites are reported annually. However, not all of those animals bitten will be treated. As a result, experts believe the actual number of bites is closer to 350 every year, which means pet parents need to stay vigilant, especially when the weather turns warmer.
This time of year, I go into kind of SWAT team mode where I'm looking at the entrance to the door. I'm looking at the perimeter of the room in the garage or my backyard, and then I'm looking across the premise and making sure I don't see anything unusual that looks like a snake.
Every time before I let them out on the property, I go around and check now. So be aware, they're out here.
Well, Ginger is now here with the backstory. Ginger, that just is chilling. I mean, you can still see, even though that was 10 days ago, still the remnants of, what's left of Romeo's bite.
Yeah, it was a giant scab, and it was actually that morning. And it was so sad talking with both Kimberly and Romeo. When he came in, he was shaking because, obviously he is familiar with being there and having to have treatment. Yeah. So he was shaking at that time, but they took such great care of him.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so that reaction, is that normal?
It really depends on where the bite happens. Dr. Deborah said because Romeo took those hits right to his head, all of the swelling that was right around the neck, that's what's impeding the breathing. Now, let's say an animal that gets bit on the leg. Well, obviously, it's going to be very painful. These are extremely painful bites, but it's not going to cause any impact as far as the breathing, so they'll be uncomfortable. And the other thing is juvenile snakes versus adult snakes. Juvenile snakes can't regulate how much venom they release, so they could be giving a double dose. Remember, though, Romeo did take a double dose.
Ow. Okay, so talk about the vaccine, the rattlesnake vaccine. Is that a good option?
It is an option. There's been a lot of new research in the last 10 to 15 years that shows that it's a better positive. The way Dr. Deborah put it to me is it's going to buy you some time. You still need to get your dog treated, but it's going to give you a little buffer to get into the vet.
Okay, so you mentioned Dr. Deborah. She also has recommendations that we can safeguard our pets?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the vaccine's a great idea, especially for at-risk dogs, older dogs, dogs that just have that instinct to constantly go out into the bushes, right, if they're on the trails. But then both Dr. Deborah and Brett the vet, our one and only, said what is crucial is rattlesnake training. And think about it, the thousands of dollars you're going to spend at the vet versus a training course to really show that dog ways to behave, because Romeo didn't want to go eat the snake. According to what Kimberly said, Romeo's just a big love and wanted to play with the snake.
They're curious. Yeah, exactly.
They're very curious. So to train them and then potentially avoid that trip to the vet.
Well, we are so glad Romeo's okay.
Yes, he's doing great, and he's such a love bug.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah.
All right, Ginger, a great story. Thank you. Has obtained the locations of 4,000 controversial guardrails along Arizona's roads. The guardrail end terminals, or they're called ET+, is the same type involved in a deadly I-17 crash back in February. That crash, if you'll remember, left one teenager dead and another without his right leg. These guardrails were the center of a class action lawsuit against the maker of the ET+. The attorneys in that case explained it was centered around a design flaw.
Instead of behaving as it should, it locks up, and that guardrail then becomes a knife or a missile into the vehicle, right through the engine block, right into the passenger compartment, killing people or taking limbs.
Now, a spokesperson for Trinity Industries, the maker of the ET+, tells 12 News in a statement they stand by the ET+. And while Trinity didn't admit fault as part of the settlement agreement in the Missouri case, they did agree to find and replace all of the ET+s on Missouri roads. Joining me now for the backstory is 12 News journalist Colleen Sikora. Colleen, we know that you've been reporting on these guardrails for months now. Where exactly, can you tell us, are these ET+ guardrails here in Arizona?
Well, the data that we obtained from ADOT shows that there are more than 4,000 of them on Arizona roads. And I mean, they're really everywhere. So, I-10 through downtown, the 202 near downtown, as well as the 60, the 202 in Mesa, the 40 in Flagstaff, the 8 near Yuma. So they're really all over Arizona's roads. And even these 4,000 still remain there today. even though ADOT took them off of their approved products list 10 years ago.
Okay, so then given the history of these guardrails, what exactly is ADOT saying about why these are still on the roads?
You know, so the feds found after an investigation into the ET Plus that they meet all applicable safety criteria, but still critics say that they're not safe because of what you heard the attorney in that Missouri case explain a little bit earlier, that they don't do what they're supposed to do on the roads. And so an ADOT spokesperson says that they're finding and replacing these as they become damaged or as new construction comes through on the highways. And so that's the only way that these are getting replaced. And unfortunately, the data also doesn't show us how many have been replaced. So all we know is that there are 4,000 on the roads today.
So what are you working on later tonight at 10?
You know, so tonight we're talking with Jet, who's the survivor of that crash in February, as well as his attorney. You know, they're calling for accountability from the state. And so we're taking that to state leaders to ask about, you know, what could they do to address these 4,000 still on Arizona roads.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Colleen. Only on 12 News, a woman thought she won more than $1 million, only to find the money would never come. Anna Martinez got a call saying that she won the Publishers Clearinghouse grand prize and she just had to pay the taxes. But that's never how this works. It turns out it was a scam call and the callers coerced her to send them wire transfers and gift cards. That's when her friend got involved and found out just how much the scammers had taken.
She showed me her bank statement, and it said at the very top of the month, it said 23,000 something something, and then it said down at the end of the month it said $1.06.
You have $1.06
on my account.
Sometimes they don't want money. Sometimes what they're trying to get is information. They're trying to get people to give up personal information that could compromise their identity, right? Make them victims of identity theft. So if somebody's asking you for things like a birth date, a social security number, hang up. It's a scam.
Joining me now with the backstory is 12 News investigative and consumer journalist Katie Wilcox. Katie, we hear about these scams all the time. How is it that these scammers are just so convincing?
Yeah, it's practice, practice, practice. The same way you get good at anything. These calls are coming in all the time, so much that yesterday, while we were putting the story together, our colleague Chase Golightly gets a call saying he won $2.6 million in a Mercedes. When he told them, hey, you sound like a scam, they changed their tactics and said, well, I'm not asking you for any money, am I? And that's why it's so important to know what to look for, because it's not just one thing. It's not necessarily just that you're asking for the cash. They might be asking you for personal information, like she mentioned. They might be asking you to just stay on the phone and stay on the phone. They're going to be really aggressive. And those are the kinds of things that you have to look out for.
Yeah, and also, I mean, just the fact that, you know, they don't pressure them to act now.
That's exactly right. Like, Publishers Clearinghouse isn't going to call you, and what they're talking about when they're getting you on the call, these scammers, they're trying to say things like, you have to do this by the end of the day. If you don't do this right now, this money can't be cleared. You're going to get it right now, or you're going to lose it forever. And those are the kinds of things that are so important to just say, okay, this is not right. But if you were convinced, if you did give some of your information, maybe you said your social security number, that can be something that you can address right away. So if you get on the horn right away, you call your bank, you report it to, we have a couple of different links, but you can report it to your local police, report it to the FTC. Those are some of the things that can really help you to make sure this doesn't happen to you, that it doesn't get worse, and talk to people and your friends so that it doesn't happen to them.
All right, Katie, great information. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching this week's Backstory. We do this weekly on 12 News at 4. Please join us at that time, or you can watch us on our YouTube channel and right here on our 12 Plus app.